then as they join on in, then we'll get started once they're in.
Sure.
So we've got riders that'll be joining us, come from across different places, as we're saying, Steve. Some of them looking down the list there this morning. We've got some that were on this morning. So they're back for their second 45-minute class. And I'm not convinced, though, Steve, that some of them aren't signing on, sitting back in their lounge chair with a cup of tea and just enjoying the chats.
Yeah, well, it's hard not to see what you're doing, though. Like they can't, if they're just sitting still. Oh, do some of them coming on just voice only?
Yeah, well, the way that we have it set up is that everyone can see and hear us now, but we've got Stu on from Dubai.
Hi, everyone.
On from down at Balmain, I think he is. We've got Hamish from New Zealand, Flick from Melbourne. We've got Bridge. We've got
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve. Nice to meet you and good on you for what you're doing.
Thailand have signed on as well, mate. So, so we've got a good crew. What we normally have, Steve, is someone here doing this and a really nice introduction, and that would be CT, my wife Claire, but she's had to bail out for something else, so she's left me in charge. So normally there's a really nice, smooth transition from a holding slide. There's music that's part of it. Then we go into this slide and there's background on you. There's a bit of an introduction and of course, none of that.
Okay, well, be all good.
And you and I will start chatting, and so just give everyone a few more minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
To join.
I'll sip my tea while everyone else is working hard on their bikes. Sorry, everyone. I should be like.
That's the pretense anyway. So, but we've clocked over 60,000 cumulative kilometres, Steve, as part of this. So it's been a fantastic program to get a lot of people involved, and so it's
right.
It's really.
And Peter, how does it feel for you personally? I mean, your staple is, you know, being there in person in Thailand and at the places where you're providing these services for kids. How have you coped with not being able to be there?
Yeah, it's certainly, like I would normally be in Thailand probably certainly once a month, if not more. And so I've missed the connection with the home and the kids and so forth. But hang on. Oh, Em's, what did you say, Em? Did you say that's working? See, I'm no good at this. Steve needs people around. Oh, here we go. We're working. Yeah, I've missed the connection with the homes and being over there. But you know, we've got the homes on today, and some of the directors from Thailand. So it's been great to have that connection. So welcome everyone. We'll get going, and as you can see, CT's not here to do a beautiful introduction. It's just Steve and I are going to have a chat, and as we head down, we continue our ride from Lung Suan towards Surat Thani, and Surat Thani onto Khao Sok is day 7, and that's coming up. That's one of my favourite days. So let me introduce you to someone who I've done some work with before and reconnected. You'll remember last week we rode with and we spoke with Kiralee Deer, and Kiralee ran from Broken Hill to Sydney, and in one of the first runs she ran from Walgett to Forbes, and those that followed the journey and the Facebook, there was an incredible video or documentary, correct way to put it forward, and it was called Iceberg. And when I watched it on the research I was doing on Kirali, I saw the video or the trailer in only a few minutes, and it just absolutely captured me like something hasn't for quite a while. It wasn't just a story, but it was the way the story was told. And you can have a good story, you've got to be able to tell it. And got to the end of that trailer, and I saw the name of the person that was a writer, director, and co-producer, and it was Steve Pasvolsky. And when I know Steve, I said, I'm going to reach out and see if we can have a chat. And Steve joins us today, and we're going to explore a whole lot of things and go to places we haven't gone as part of this series. And Steve, I'm really looking forward to the chat. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and hi to everyone out there on their bikes. It's my pleasure to talk to you, and I'm enjoying the ride as well. So hopefully I've got something to offer. I guess it's funny, I've seen Peter on the other side telling stories, and I actually think he's a great storyteller. If you've ever seen him pitch or talk about the shared experience. So yeah, it's my privilege. Thanks for having me.
Steve, let's go back. You grew up in Cape Town,
yeah,
so with your family, and you left there the age of 4, 1970.
No, I left there at the age of 11.
Right.
1977, end of 77.
Okay then. Okay, so you would have early childhood memories then, quite clear of your time there in South Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's weird when you immigrate. It's like a time someone's put all those memories in a bottle, and they seem to have stuck. And it was so different to Australia back then, and the experiences were so extreme that yeah, I've got a much clearer picture of my first 11 years than actually my first 5 years in Australia. I mean, I was a teenager, or like at 12, and then teenagehood in Australia, and basically I was just in survival mode then in Australia. So it's a bit of a blur. I can remember some highlights and lowlights from that, but yeah, I mean, South Africa, the things that I witnessed as a young kid, you know, mainly around racism, mainly around watching people with a different colored skin to your own being mistreated. And for a large part of that, thinking that it was normal because people talked about it as normal. And my parents, even in their 30s, that is when they started to travel and to realize that it wasn't normal. And so that sort of filtered down to us. And all of a sudden, my parents were reeling and going, we need to get out of here. So yeah, I've got some very violent memories where I've seen people being really hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're obviously part of the formative years, first 11 years growing up. And but as you say, your environment's your environment, and it's only until you step outside that you realise what that is, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the result of it for me has been like it just forged in me that I'm on the side of the underdog.
Yeah.
It just that's like if I had to distill it down to one thing, I'm for the underdog. I mean, there's plenty of people, people in the world who are, but that's the net result for me is that for me it's just about the other, about the unrepresented, about justice. Yeah, that's what it did for me. So I'm always thanking my folks when my folks think they haven't done enough for me financially or in any other way. I just go like, oh my God, just that one thing, that immigration, and showing me what was wrong about the treatment of people. I'm ever thankful.
And how was the transition for your mum and dad leaving South Africa coming to Australia. What was that like? Was there an established community? Did you have work to go into? Were you able to bring the benefits of the hard work and asset and wealth from South Africa? Was that something you could bring to Australia with you?
Okay, so a few parts to that question. My parents were gung-ho to come to Australia. I've got to just tell you a little anecdote. Yes, I mean, they were white, middle class, so they had money to travel, and they actually went on a trip to find a place to call home, and they were very unsure about where to go, but my dad went, in those days you got off the plane and walked across the tarmac, and my dad says that he was walking across the tarmac and a guy in a Qantas outfit went, "G'day, mate." And my old man looked at my mum and went, this is where we're going to live.
Yeah, right.
At that moment. There wasn't a big South African community, nothing like there is today. There was sort of one wave, I think, that came across in the early 70s. And I think I'm talking about like 4 or 5 families, literally.
Yeah, right.
And then when we came at the end of 77, we knew one other family that was here. And yes, we did commune with them. But my dad was always about what Australia had to offer. And he was a really good PR man in terms of the country we were going to, you know, the nature, the sport, the beaches, the attitude. And luckily for my dad, we had a good rugby team, the Wallabies, and my dad was a huge rugby fan. So he switched off a switch that said, I don't go for the Springboks anymore, I go for the Wallabies. And although he had a strong South African accent, he was like, we're Australians now.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit difficult for them because they left friends and family behind. And Angelina, who we will talk about later.
Yes.
But for me, it was slightly harder. I had a pretty rough entry into Australia. If I'm allowed to tell you the no holes barred story.
Please do.
I can look like any ethnicity besides Australian, whether it's Lebanese, Greek, Italian. Some people think I'm Indigenous Australian. So I've actually got to feel the brunt of some racism. And funnily enough, having come from this really racist country, I arrived in Australia and a week later I was at a high school and I won't go into details, but I got punched in the face about 6 times by one guy. Once when I was standing and 5 times while I was on the floor. I weed in my pants and I ran home and hid in the bushes until 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
For my mum. So I realized that I adopted some Darwinism and I went from having a little boy South African accent to an Australian accent overnight, basically. Yeah. So I just practiced an Australian accent and I went to school the next day. I think I might have also sandpapered my brand new shoes a little bit as well so that I didn't stick out too much.
Yeah.
And pulled my tie down a little bit. And next thing you know, I was an Aussie larrikin. And so I just like fitting in was hard in the beginning. And there wasn't a lot of immigration. I remember there weren't any even Asian, there were no Asian kids at my school as well. Oh, I forgot to say this, that while the guy was punching me, I kind of went unconscious very quickly, and I didn't even really feel much in terms of pain. But all I remember is him saying to me, "Go back, swear word to Italy, you wog." Right, and I'm from South Africa. Yeah. So you can imagine an 11-year-old kid. What does that mean? Go back to Italy, you wog. You know what I mean? So it was hard. And then as you make friends, it was just I had a wonderful childhood and first 5 or 6 years in Australia. I mean, there was always that stuff coming up. It was quite tough. In terms of finances, my parents being able to bring out, I guess, money that they had earned in South Africa, you could, in those days, you could bring out $20,000 a year. And then every year you could bring out the interest of any savings that you had.
Right.
So, I don't know what $20,000 in 1977 would be equal to now.
Yeah.
But it was certainly not nothing, but it wasn't exorbitant.
No.
And my dad found it very hard to find work.
Yeah.
But he did find some, and my mum worked a little bit, and there were 4 kids. So it was like, look after the kids, take them, the focus was sport and after school activities, just like every other kid. That was their life. And then they made friends, admittedly, not that many Australians, South African people to start off with. But then as we were there and all their kids got Australian friends, they then slowly began to assimilate a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So, Steve, you obviously go through school, and 2001, if I got it correct, you graduate from the Australian Film, TV and Radio School with a Master's Honours degree in producing.
Yeah.
What was it about the production side that appealed to you, and when did you know your calling was going to be about telling stories of others?
Hey, I'm giving you the freedom to just hit a buzzer when I wrap it on and go off. Okay, Peter? Well, I was always, I have a father who is the best storyteller I've ever heard. He was the kind of person that people come over for dinner and my dad's telling stories and people are crying and laughing.
Yeah.
No one wants it to stop. It's sort of like one more. So I didn't know that I was going to follow that, but looking back, that's where it came from. I was always ordained to go to uni to study something from like architecture or dentistry was the repeated hint around the dinner table. And I actually ended up not getting into architecture. I studied building science, which was amazing. But I always had a video camera. When I mean a video camera, I mean like a little overnight bag.
Yeah.
Video camera. And I was always the irritating person on a trip somewhere, filming my friends, doing little edits of it and getting just part-time enjoyment out of that. When I then got a job in the construction industry from my science degree, after about 8 years in that industry, I started to just go, the storytelling part just had to come out. And I sort of realized that I could make a living out of it. So I decided I'll pull up stumps on my building science career and try and get into film school. My first attempt failed. And then my second attempt, I did get in. I luckily got in. And then I guess what attracted me about it was being able to say something, because we feel so powerless. Yes, we can go and speak to a room or speak to someone one-on-one and try and change their opinion or their attitude. But I just looked at it as a real empowerment. Oh my God, I could say something about life or the observation of people and their behavior. And that just felt very exciting. I was also a bit green, because I didn't really know how the industry worked or how tough it is, because like every industry, it's very tough. But yeah, it was just that need stories were coming up and I was writing them down and I was like, well, what good are they in a drawer? I need to actually try and explore these. And Inja, the film,
the illustration film
that I graduated with, tied the two things together, the need to say something and then my experience from South Africa.
And that, you talk about not knowing the industry, but sometimes when we just step into it, we're not bound by history and precedent. We can make mistakes, but we can also do some pretty daring things. That first film, Inja, it did all right.
It did all right.
It got nominated for an award.
It did.
What was it?
Well, it actually got nominated for an Oscar an Academy Award in 2003 in the best short drama category. So,
and so just step us through the process of how one gets nominated.
Sure.
You get to head over. Do you get to have the whole shebang? And what was that like?
Well, it was incredible. Okay, so you make a film, whether it's a short drama or documentary or a long drama and documentary, and there's hundreds of film festivals around the world that you can submit it to, that they either accept or deny your entry to, and there's about 150 festivals around the world that if you win one of those festivals, in the short film category, if you win one of those festivals, you then become eligible for the Academy Award assessment, I guess the panel of whoever judges the Academy Awards. So Inja thankfully won 2 festivals. One was Nashville and the other one was Aspen Film Festivals. I didn't get to go to either of them, but it won both of those. So it then went into the pool of the 150 winners from there. And then they whittled that down to a short list of 10. And then a week after that, then the judges watched everything again, and then they whittled that down to 5. I think I just wanted to tell you an interesting story about taking risks or not listening to the rules.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a rule. The Sundance Film Festival has a rule that it has to be a premiere. Your film, if you're going to submit your film, it has to be a premiere. But Inja had already shown at another film festival. So when I was asking people in the know, well, can't I just not say that it's a thing? Anyway, everyone said, no, you don't submit it. You can't submit it. It's not the premiere. You're wasting your $55 entry fee. It's the biggest film festival in the world. Cannes and Sundance are 2 of the biggest. So I didn't listen, and I submitted my VHS tape, and where it said world premiere on it, I said, yes, it will be a world premiere, but it wasn't. I hope I don't go to hell. I hope you guys don't hold this against me.
I think
and so I submitted it, and it got into Sundance. I guess the reason I'm telling you that is that because Sundance is such a well-known festival, the festival directors from Nashville and Aspen were there. So I didn't actually have to even apply for those festivals. They invited me. So I got into Sundance, and then I got a roll on from there. In fact, from Sundance, I think I got into about 15 festivals.
Yeah, right.
At the other 13, I didn't win. I got screened and people saw it. So should I keep going and just tell you about the Oscars experience?
Well, tell me, one of us has had lunch with Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it wasn't me.
Well, so the Oscars really is a 2-week period. So you got to go to LA. You got to go to all these little well, they're not little. They organize functions for the nominees because they need the press to come in, take photos. And when I say nominees, we're talking about the famous nominees really that they want. So I went for 2 weeks leading up to it, and there's a lot of press and everything that you had to do. I enlisted my sister, Janine, to be my sort of liaison, because it was crazy because Nicole Kidman was nominated that year and everyone wanted to know about her, and then all of a sudden the press picked up that there was also this nobody.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, once they'd done their talks with Nicole, they wanted to pick up on the nobody, and then I had lots of interview requests. And there was a luncheon, and I went to the luncheon, and there was a board that said the table numbers that everyone was on, and I looked at my name, and lo and behold, the person I was sitting next to, I can't remember if it was next to or on my table, but it said Jack Nicholson was going to be on my table. And he ended up sitting next to me for lunch. And I think the interesting part about that lunch and chatting to him Look, I'm hopeless with famous people. I gush and I get all nervous, and I'm no good at it. I've met plenty of famous people, but I never get any better at it. But with Jack, for some reason, okay, so for a start, he is the most lovely person I've met, and I've met a lot of celebrities. He's the most genuine, lovely person I've met. Anyway, he sits down in his sunnies, you know, I'll try my best. You know, hello, everybody. You know, it's so great to be here. This is a once in a lifetime. Let's just enjoy it. And someone said, how are you? And he said, oh, I'm so exhausted. I've been working really hard. I happened to be up all night watching TV in America because I had jet lag, and he was at an LA Lakers game at 1 a.m. that night, the night before. So when the fuss about him died down, I leaned across and said, I don't believe you at all. I saw you at the Lakers game last night. And it sort of was him a license where he sort of maybe said in his head, oh, well, this guy isn't going to ask me about my film career. He just wants to talk basketball.
Yeah.
So we just chatted about basketball and the nuances of the playoffs and whatever else was happening. And so I had a lovely chat, which was sort of like, oh my God, I'm just talking sport rubbish with Jack Nicholson. Yeah. Whereas if I had started with anything about film, he probably would have backed off.
Yeah, sure.
So that was a good lesson. Actually, my dad taught me that lesson when I was quite young. He used to say, you know, if you ever go in for an interview and there's something interesting on the person's desk, just ask them about it.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I didn't think about that with Jack, but now that I'm thinking about it, I do credit my dad with quite a lot, actually. But
sure. Mate, let's move forward from the academies. And 2005, you direct and write Deck Dogs.
Yeah.
Now, Deck Dogs is a Tony Hawk story. Anyone who has kids or any knowledge of skateboarding will know that Tony Hawk is responsible for the rise of skateboarding across the globe, world-time skateboarding champ. I guess the question I have is, how do you get to tell that story? Does he find you? Do you find him? What's that process of discovery like?
Okay. God, I wish I was the same person that I'm about to tell you the story of. I wish I was the same guy. I mean, I can still bash down doors, but I basically bash down doors with one provisor on that.
Yep.
I knew that I had a really good script. So the team around me that commissioned me to write the film and a few other people had read the script, a couple of film distribution companies, and I knew the script was really good. So I knew that if I bashed down a door, I might get a good response. And that gave me the confidence to bash the door down. Anyway, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
I flew to New York because his agent was in New York. I can't remember if I was there for a film festival or the production actually flew me to try and do this. A $1,500 ticket and some accommodation. And I rang his agent and they didn't want to see me. I said, you know, I had a skateboard film. Tony Hawk's actually written into the film. It's great. Anyway, 3 phone calls, no results. And I actually went to the building. I went up to the 67th floor somewhere on Madison Avenue in New York, and I knocked on the door. It was Friday afternoon, and his agent actually let me into the room. And I mean, a massive, like one of the top Hollywood agents in the world. And I was there, you know, he's in like a 3-piece suit, and I'm sort of in Deck Dog's character, sort of like an old man skateboarder. I think I must have been 33 or 34 at the time. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the Aussie accent. I don't know what it was. I can't tell you.
The good looks, Steve. The good looks.
Yeah, the meathead look. Where it was just one of those things where he just happened. I don't know what I said, or he said something and I responded, and he liked me. And all of a sudden, I'm in his office having a chat about deck dogs. And the key to that was that he said to me, well, Tony Hawk doesn't want to be the person to come on board and then the program gets green lit. He doesn't want to feel used like that, you know, like, okay, well, we've got a big name now the financiers will get on board. You know, he wanted to know, Tony Hawk wanted to know that the film would be good enough to happen without him.
Yeah, right.
So, and I guess my response to to his agent, which might sound arrogant, but you just, at that moment, you just kind of got to say it. I think I said to him, well, I'm really proud of the script. I think that if Tony reads it, not just you, but if Tony reads it, he'll want to do it. So it sounds pretty far-fetched, doesn't it? But it's true. Anyway, so I want to fast forward a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'm driving in Sydney. I'm out west somewhere, Western Sydney, Fairfield, running out of petrol. So I'm freaking out. I find a service station and I'm filling up my car. My mobile phone goes, and it's America, like +1972 or something. I take a deep breath. I didn't know who it was, but I answered the phone while I'm filling up the petrol. And the voice says, you know, hey, Steve, it's Tony Hawk here. I swear to God, I could barely speak.
Yeah.
And I did this funny thing that I couldn't control. Actually, for some reason, I started talking like Tony Soprano from The Sopranos. And I was kind of like, hey, Tony. I'm not kidding, right? I just lost my head completely. And anyway, he said, man, I love the script. It's great. If you get financed, I'll definitely do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even just saying that was enough collateral for us to go to, or for the producers to go to a big film company and say, well, look, you know, we've pretty much got Tony Hawk. If you sign this off, then he's in. And he came out for 5 days. We had him for 5 days. The first couple of days were at Maroubra Skate Park. And he came out at about 11 a.m. And there was just a little film. It was actually just a bit of a warm up for him. 11 a.m. He was straight from the airport. And by 1 p.m., we had a crowd of about 5,000 people there from all the surrounding schools.
Yeah,
Someone had made a phone call, and they were down there, and he did this funny thing. He fell and cut his finger, and I can remember, and it was bleeding. I can remember he wrote Tony Hawk in blood on the concrete on the skate park, and you can imagine the 15-year-old kids just having a well, I don't know if it was such selfieville back then, but there were a lot of photos happening with Tony Hawk written in blood. Anyway.
Yeah, cool, mate. Yeah, I want to get to 2016, and
that's a big jump. And maybe you should tell your audience that where you thought I was during that time, Peter.
So when I was doing the research with Tony, for Steve, there's a public list of all the things he's done up to 2005. It's pretty clear, and then it goes silent to 2016. I rang Steve. I said, Steve, I'm going to ask you this question, where you were. I said, but is there anything I should know beforehand? Did you spend 11 years in prison? What happened here? And he said, yep, you got me. I did 11 years inside, but that formed the story. Not at all, mate. But there is a segue to the question I do want to talk about was the years that you spent writing about the Milperra bikie massacre. You know, something that was, for those in Sydney, New South Wales, such a defining point in our history of the fight between the Comancheros and the Banditos and the Milperra pub there. What was it like for you? What was the process, and what did you take out of it?
Well, so just to let you know the connection. So, and that absence of time, everyone, it's mainly because making films just takes so long and there's no guarantee in them ever being financed. So because I'd made a film that was about a subculture, deck dogs, the producers of Brothers in Arms, who were adapting the book about the Milperra massacre, considered me to be the writer-director.
Right.
So I got him. It was great. I mean, first of all, it's hard to get gigs, and let alone hard to get a gig where it's such a big event and a challenge, I guess. So that experience, I mean, a priceless experience because I actually got to spend a lot of time with people in the Banditos and in the Comanchero biker clubs. So there was like this naivety of going in there. And I mean, at the end of the day, I lived to tell the tale, but I had some very, very hairy experiences. But I didn't want to take the job in the beginning because I was scared of bikers and I don't believe in their ethos, really. So I was like, well, and people said to me, why do you want to make a film about bikers? And I always said to them, well, I'm making a film about human beings. And actually, because I don't understand bikerdom, that's why I want to do it.
Yeah.
I can get something from it as well and find the human side. I don't want the characters to be cardboard cutouts. They have to be, three-dimensional characters for whatever their failings are or whatever their breaking of the law. And I also knew that it might be, in people's consciousness. So there's a ready-made audience there, plus the book. So it's like a no-brainer. Yeah, I'll do it. But yeah, I can't say it. I think that at the end of the day, I feel like what I learned about people was that everyone needs a family and everyone needs support. Like if I look at some of the challenges I've had, I go, well, if I didn't have a great wife and my brothers and sisters didn't love me and weren't there for me at the end of the day, and if my parents weren't there, and if I didn't have 2 or 3 good friends, maybe I would have fallen apart.
Yeah.
So imagine a kid, and actually the Milperra Massacre, or Brothers in Arms, is about a boy who was orphaned at 5, who found his mother who had committed suicide. She had slit her own throat. And he was a redheaded kid that went from orphanage to orphanage to orphanage and got beaten up, and then found a biker club, and they provided him with love and backup.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer, really.
Steve, you say that people want family, community and connections, and it's exactly what Hands is about. It's providing those opportunities for kids to belong, kids to have identities, and so it makes sense. Steve, I want to move through a few things, conscious of time. As I said, you did the Iceberg Run Against Violence, and spending that time with Kirili and seeing the suffering and so forth. And I think, the best thing people can do is, and I'll repost it, is that video or the trailer that captures, just your usual way of telling a story. When I was reading, Steve, one of the things that really spoke to me was the honour you must have had of 2017 with John Eales and the Harker. And he's quoted as saying his admission, his only regret was 1996, turning his back on the Kiwis as they did their Harker. And, it was obviously a trying to be a tactical decision, not one of disrespect, but he went back and you told the story of him righting that wrong in his mind. What was that journey like? It
was absolutely amazing. The the thing that was wrapped around his regret and the need for redemption was how he realized how little he knew about the significance of the haka to Maori people, you know, the average New Zealander, and New Zealand as a country. Like, he knew next to nothing. And funnily enough, and I've seen every haka that the All Blacks have done in front of Australia my whole life, and I also didn't know anything. So
Yeah.
the layers of enjoyment of that trip were about discovering the cultural significance and the history of the haka, which is unbelievably emotional. I'll get back to that in a minute. And if I burst out crying, it's actually very fresh, even though it was a couple of years ago. The second layer of enjoyment was I got to meet rugby players, famous rugby players and All Blacks. And then the third was to travel around with John Eales and talk about life beyond rugby. And we bonded, really. And he's an amazing leader. And I picked up a lot of little leadership qualities in there, or little tips about getting the best out of people. And so, yeah, it was just a great experience. Like anything, like any film or story, I mean, it's like a documentary. So I wrote a treatment of where we wanted to go and what I thought the interactions with John would be. But that's just a blueprint. And then you go and you shoot that blueprint and you come back with a whole bunch of rushes or footage, and then, you know, you throw it down and you got to sort it out. So I just wanted to say this: I'm very analog. I basically card up every moment in a color code and location and people. And one of my favorite activities in life is actually to stare at those cards on the dining room table once the kids are asleep and shuffle the cards around and discover the right structure to tell the story. And the story sort of comes out at you. And I do that over and over and over and over again. And then I number the cards and I put them in a deck, you know, rainbow deck. And then a couple of days later, I'll lay the cards down again and go, oh, that doesn't make sense. And that's basically how I work, just by the way. I mean, I've got to get off the computer and the edit suite. You know, I'm very analog before I actually go and edit. Yeah, tell me if I'm rabbiting on. But anyway, the one of the most telltale moments for me in New Zealand was we met a descendant of the chief who created the kamate, which is the best known New Zealand haka.
Yeah.
And we went to the hut where this descendant was hiding from the enemy when he recited that haka, made it up. So we were right on location there, and we were with the chief, the descendant of the chief. And I mean, on the outside, this man looked like the meanest warrior you've ever seen in your life. Rewind to that morning when I met him in a cafe with lots of people around, just to introduce myself before we went on the journey. We're sitting at the table, and within about 15 seconds, he took his massive hand and he put it over my hand. And he didn't say anything. It was just in general conversation. It was such a warm gesture of trust. It could have been a gesture of warning, but I took it as a gesture of trust. And he was so warm, and he's looking at me in the eye, and I don't know, I was just blown away by that culture. Can I just go on a little bit about the culture?
Please do.
The thing that struck me is when we went to that site where the first haka was recited, we had to do a welcome to country. And in that welcome to country, they're not just welcoming you. I guess this is why a welcome to country in this country is so important. but I actually only understood it then, because in this country, it's not really explained to me or to school kids really enough. But over there, the chief explained to us, John and myself and the crew, that when they welcome us to country, they're also welcoming like 300 of our ancestors above our head that we are carrying with us onto the land. And then he said to me that he knows 900 of his family tree off by heart above him. And that if school kids want to embrace their culture, that they teach them that. And he said a lot of school kids can name 300 people above them that they carry around with them.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my God, I don't even know the names of my great-grandparents.
Yeah.
I mean, I do now because I've taken a moment.
Yeah.
It sort of was a mind-blowingly emotional thing for everyone on that. And John really, so then when he flashed back to turning his back on the haka, it really had, it was a great thing. I mean, the show was his conception.
Yeah,
he was like, I want to go back, I want to find out, I want to get redemption, and I want to make a doco about it. So.
And did you find it?
Sorry?
Did John find his redemption? Did he walk away as satisfying and answering the questions he had?
Yeah, I think I have to say, I think he definitely found a lot of peace, genuinely. I mean, on the last scene of the film, we rounded up as many All Blacks that were there that day to talk about, like to ask him, you know, why are you here? What are you doing? And they just thought it was a great gesture.
Yeah.
And yeah, they did. I mean, they did give him redemption, you know, but it was more in the biggest realization for him, I think, was about this country, about Australia. Sorry, I don't mean to get political, Peter.
No, not at
but
all.
Just about this country, how we have this unbelievable culture in this country, and we haven't exercised the joy and the learnings that we could have. The celebration, that was the biggest moment for him, was that the realization that that we haven't embraced it enough here.
I wonder, Steve, and we won't explore this, but I wonder if it's that was a reflection of the sport and the time, or was it more about the man himself, that something was so important, and to find the answers, and maybe it's both. But let me go to.
Actually, can I just qualify something? Sorry, Peter, to interrupt you. That the coach at the time, it was John's first game as a captain.
Yeah.
And the coach at the time said that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But John, in his heart, then knew it was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
But felt insecure as a leader.
Yeah.
And his position hadn't been cemented yet.
Yeah.
So he went against his gut because he wasn't a strong enough leader yet. But that, in a way, made him the leader that he was. It was a turning point in becoming stronger and standing up for what he believed in back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a powerful story. And Steve, we can't finish without talking about your production of Finding Angelina. A true story. It takes you back to South Africa, and Angelina was worked within the family home, and at some point she didn't return to work. Can you pick up the story and share what you?
Yeah. So Angelina was a domestic worker in our home in South Africa for my first 10 years. She didn't leave. We immigrated to Australia.
Yep.
And amongst friends and family, she was someone that we left behind as well.
Yep.
This is where it gets complex and complicated, but stick with me. My parents, they didn't hate South Africa, but they hated the apartheid regime. so much so that they basically wanted to blank everything out that went before we came to Australia. So my dad just hated looking back, and we didn't block out Angelina, but we did not communicate with her like we should have. And we did stay in touch with her for a little while, but then we lost track. In my family, my siblings, we had folklore is not the right word, but we had in our heads a story that Angelina, while she looked after us, lost a child back in her homeland, which was a 15-hour drive from Cape Town. And this was something that we felt so bad about that we also tried to block that out.
Yeah.
And we didn't really want to confront it. But when I had my own kids and that came up again, I went, oh my God, she lost a child in her homeland, 15 hours away while she was looking after us. I have to go back and find her and express what I love and gratification. If they're not enough, but my appreciation for that sacrifice. And then in trying to find her, she had disappeared and no one knew where she was. There were rumors that she'd joined the ANC during the struggle. There were a lot of unanswered questions. So I went back there to try and find her. And I hired an amazing woman there, Sibo, and she actually found her. Yeah. So we found her. She was on a mountaintop, really in a shack with an outhouse on the top of a massive hill in the Eastern Cape. And we had a reunion with her and met her grandchildren. None of her kids were alive. And yeah, I know we're running out of time, but it kind of unraveled a little bit because the naivety of the white person that immigrated, had a good life in South Africa, then had a good life in Australia, coming back to express love to someone that had spent 40 years on their knees cleaning white people's kitchens for, so, and that really reared its head there. And really, I think changed my life, really. I mean, I'm still reeling from it. And that was a couple of years ago as well. Just there's no reparation for that. It's just a system. It's just like a victims of the system everywhere, and that only generations can solve. But it was very sobering for me. It was beautiful. Like, I can't tell you how beautiful it was. And the film is beautiful. The moment where we actually get to see Angelina, and I don't want to spoil the film, but when we finally get to see her, she actually said, because I went back with my brother, Jonathan, when we saw her, she was like, "You did love me. Oh my God, you loved me. Somewhere God is smiling on me," So yeah, it was incredibly emotional. But then things, particularly with the next generation, her grandchildren, it sort of turned into, are we done?
No, you're right.
Yeah, it sort of turned into a much more complex question than simply going back to express your gratification. Turned into a whole bunch of complex issues. Yeah.
Steve, I don't mean to put my observations onto your story, but reading about the Haka and then Angelina, I couldn't help but wonder if the story of redemption for John Eales, in some way, it sounds to me like the story of Angelina is a story of redemption for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely on the money. I mean, on point. I think there is a lot of guilt about some things, and Angelina would be like right up there, because the love that she showed us and we showed her when we were young in those first 10 years was quite incredible, like a mother. And then to up and leave and have a new opportunity in an amazing country like this, just to have the choice is a huge thing. And yeah, I mean, maybe I have been trying to undo that, but it's just turned me, I think, into a curious person on many levels. And also, like, I do like to take action, whether the results of that are good and bad. So that was my action.
Yeah,
and, maybe a deeper person anyway.
Yeah, well, it started with kicking down doors for Tony Hawk, or it probably was there a lot more before that. But without the action, there's no results. And
well, that's that. Imagine if you didn't start hands and do it. You know, you just made a decision, and look where it is.
And we certainly can't change what's happened, but we can all change what happens next. And I think through the power of your storytelling and the deep goodness within your soul, Steve, comes across in your professional work and storytelling. And you can have a story, but to be able to tell it is the gift. And there's no doubt you've helped plenty of people tell some amazing stories. And it's a shame that we only had 45, 50 minutes today, because I think, there's so much, and evidenced by the number of people who are still on, even though we're well over time, just listening to your stories. And it's been so nice to spend some time with you today, Steve. And may you continue to look into the souls of those that you then tell their stories and enrich us all. Because when I looked at the story you told of Kirili, it was just something that had a deep impact upon me, and I'm sure that's with all your work. So thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate it, and thank you to everyone who's still online and cycled that trip. Yeah. That was amazing. Congratulations.
Well, I think everyone can take an extra 5Ks for their credit from today and turn 25 into 30. I know I will be. That wraps us up for today, and we'll be back tomorrow morning with a man. And I don't know, Steve, if you've crossed his path, but Bernie Shakeshaft is his name. And,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, so he's someone I consider a good friend, and just doing amazing things up in Armidale with the kids. And we had two of his boys, along with Matt, one of their leaders, come and ride with us in Thailand this year. And Steve, seeing the impact it had for those boys was something that will certainly stay with me for a long time. So we're having a chat with Bernie tomorrow. And if you can join us, be up at 7 o'clock, because he's an incredible man. He's was voted Australian of the Year local hero this year, and has a great impact on so many. So but that's it for today. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks all the best, Peter. Good luck, everyone.
To our friends in Thailand, Sawadee Krap, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.